Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending this month's webinar on cross-team project management for Jira Cloud. My name's Alexis Pottermorney. I'm a marketing associate here at ALM Works, and I'll be today's host of the webinar. Next slide. Just a few housekeeping points before we start the presentation. Just want to let everyone know that all attendee microphones are muted. So if you have any loud background noise, don't worry, we won't be able to hear any of your background noise. We have a Q&A feature located at the bottom of the screen. That's the platform you'll be using to submit your questions. Questions will be answered after the prepared discussion. If it's easier for everyone, please submit your questions during the presentation to make sure they are ready to be answered during the Q&A session at the end. And this session will be recorded, and in 24 to 48 hours, we will be posting this on YouTube, and you'll be receiving an email with the recording to YouTube. So you'll be able to keep this video and even give it to your colleagues and friends to review. Next slide. Now I'd like to introduce today's speaker. Today we have Nicholas Ellis. He is a solutions engineer here at ALM Works. He is also a SAFE SPC. Nick helps new customers quickly get Structure up and running, and he makes sure existing customers take full advantage of Structure's features. He works to tailor solutions to their businesses so Structure fits the way they work, not the other way around. Nick has experience in several types of Agile processes and a background in development. His experience as a software developer, Scrum Master, and manager gives him insight into each rung of the corporate ladder. No matter your role, process, or industry, he can help you get more out of your Jira data. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to Nick.
I was muted there. Thanks, Alexis. Yeah, so I'd like to start off today with a quick little couple questions just to get a feel for who's in the audience today and who we're talking to. So yeah, I'll give you some time. There's only 3 questions, but we'll take a minute here to fill this out. So yeah, let's take a look at these results. So it looks like a lot of you have significant experience with Jira Cloud. So we've got a lot of people here who have been using it for a while. And it looks like a lot of people have also used Jira Server, almost everybody. Wow, and it looks like a lot of these use cases are almost everyone as well. So that's a really good sign. I think you guys are in the right place. Then yeah, let's get started. So yeah, we've kind of already gone through our introduction here, and I'll be talking a little bit about Jira Agile boards, the things that they do well, and some of their limitations. And then we'll talk about how we can do those same things in Structure. And then at the end, we'll do a quick demo of Gantt Cloud, which we're very excited about. It should be available next week, so just right around the corner. And then lastly, we'll open it up to questions. So yeah, if you have anything you're curious about, feel free to just shoot in questions as we go through the presentation, and we'll try to address them all at the end. So without much more lead up, let's just kind of jump right into it. So There are two types of Agile boards. Kanban is the simpler of the two. And I think the main point that I want to drive home here, and this is something that will come up a lot, is these boards are really good at one dimension. They're really good at answering one question and putting things into a singular context. For Kanban boards, that singular context is what status issues are in. So we've got our to do, we've got our in progress, and that's the right, we'd have our done. If we have more statuses, then we would have more columns, but the Kanban is really ideal for small unstructured teams. We're just trying to see what the work is progress is. We want to make sure that we're limiting the work in progress. We're not biting off too much at a single time. It's focusing on the present. It's not really focusing on the long-term plan. It's just what is going on right now? What are we working on right now? And this is often a very effective way for small teams to manage work. It's really easy to see what's in process, what's going on. We've got a simple UI. We're supporting different workflows and things like this. And so the Kanban board answers the one question of what's the work in progress? What's the work in this individual status? And it's really good at that one singular thing. Scrum boards are great for smaller, more structured teams. They're focusing more on planning, and we're breaking things into sprints. We're focusing on not just now, not just what's in progress today or this week or this sprint, but also what's coming up next, what's on the horizon, and kind of what's a little bit out. I generally find that Scrum teams have a little bit more process involved, and it makes sense that the Scrum board is a little bit more oriented to those sorts of questions. But we can think of the Kanban as essentially grouping by status, and the Scrum board as grouping by sprint. They're both really good at doing those one individual things, but as I mentioned, this is kind of the one-dimensional nature of these Agile boards. Jira also offers basic roadmaps, which if some of you have been here for a while, so I'm sure that the renaming, which has been curious to watch. It was roadmaps, and then it was portfolio, and now it's back to roadmaps. Jira basic roadmaps, it allows you to answer the question of, kind of what is the timeline and how long is it going to take to complete these tasks. It does the grouping by epics, and those are kind of the dimensions that we can look at. If you want to group by epics and you want to see a simple timeline, then it's great. But if you want to do something more complex, if you want to break down by more dimensions, it really leaves a lot to be desired. But it does do a good job of visualizing links. It does do a good job of visualizing the timeline, and it's another good way of tracking ongoing work. I think that's clearly the overall goal of Jira and the goal of all these different boards. So on a Jira board, we can do a lot of different things, and if we want to group, we can group by sprint, or we can group by epic, or we can group by status, as we saw with those three different boards. If we want to order, we can order by rank or a different single field. If we want to link issues, we can link issues within the board, often within the project, but we can't do multiple levels of linking. We can't do multiple types of ordering, and we can't do multiple types of grouping. This is kind of the issue that I see with these things, is we get this one dimensionality. If you want to group by sprint, you have to go to a Scrum board. If you want to group by status, you go to a Kanban board. If you want to group by both, there's not really an option with Jira out of the box. There's not really much that it can do for you. And I think it's great for a lot of simple use cases where that one dimension or that one question that you're trying to answer is there. But often, the business world is not so simple, and we often have a lot of complex questions that we're trying to answer. So let's talk about what's good first. I really like prioritizing the backlog via rank. I think this is probably one of the best features of the Jira boards. It's really nice and really easy to reorganize your backlog to show what's higher priority. Breaking work down into these one dimensions, whether it's sprint or status or epic, those breakdowns and those groupings are very, very helpful. Being able to visualize the work in progress, we don't just want that information, in text in a spreadsheet. We want to have nice visuals, so it's very clear and easy to see. We want road mapping. We want to be able to see what's coming up And then the ability to do a simple hierarchy is nice, being able to see how issues roll up and how they fit into larger picture and larger context is always a good thing to have. So there's definitely a lot of good to be had. I'm certainly not here to say anything bad about Jira or Jira boards. Some of the things that become problematic, some of the limitations that we run into is when we're dealing with multiple teams and multiple projects. There's quite a few different things that make this problematic. If you have multiple boards that have the same issues on different boards, the reorganizing by rank can run into problems. Trying to have multiple teams on the same board can get really confusing and difficult. Visualizing cross-project dependencies is probably one of the biggest problems that I hear about, especially on Jira Cloud from our customers. And that can be a really severe limitation because we can only manage what we can understand and see coming up. If you don't know that there are these cross-project dependencies, if you can't see that they're going on, it can be even more difficult to address. Yeah, as I mentioned, the cross-project backlog prioritization is one of the reasons why multiple teams and multiple projects and multiple boards can be a little bit difficult. And then one of the things that I've kind of been broaching this whole time is these complex and dynamic hierarchical views. So, we get this one dimensionality with the Jira boards, so we can break down by epic or by sprint or by status. But if we want to combine them, if we want to have multiple, if we want to have multiple different levels of this hierarchy, that becomes really difficult. The Jira road mapping doesn't really do a lot for resource allocation. So if you have different teams with different capacity, they're just going to be flat on those Jira road mapping boards. They're not going to be able to represent that very well. And then, the timeline planning is good on a single board, but across multiple projects, across multiple teams, this is another point where we definitely see it's a little bit of a struggle with the Jira boards. So, these are the questions that I think we need to ask ourselves when looking at these Jira boards. Are they enough? Do they meet our needs? And so, if you don't have a lot of teams and you don't, need that cross-team functionality, then maybe it's not important to you. Maybe you don't have a lot of cross-project relations. Maybe your different projects are completely isolated and completely decoupled and don't have significant relationships to visualize. Maybe you don't need complex filters and grouping. Maybe you have relatively simple use cases and this one dimensionality is enough. And maybe you don't need customization. Maybe it's fine the way it is and you don't need to spend a lot of time tailoring and custom fitting things to your use cases. But I think these are the strong points of, different use cases that point us to, we might need something more. We might need something else to answer these questions effectively. So then we get to the question of, are these things critical? Do we have multiple teams? Do we have multiple projects? Are we dealing with these cross-project dependencies? Do we need to visualize them? Can we see them other places? Do we need a dynamic hierarchy? Do we have complex filtering questions? These are all limitations of these Jira boards. And are these things important today? Do we need these functionalities? And this is a question for all of you to consider. How important are these things to you? Are they critical for your business processes or not? But I think even if none of these things are critical for you, we have to ask the question of, let's look forward. Even if we don't have multiple teams today or multiple projects today, I think it's likely that, a lot of things are heading in that direction. I don't think anyone expects their business to be static or to remain the way it is today going into the future. So I think that the real question maybe isn't, do we need these things today? Do we have, these needs right now? But will we run into these needs in the future? Because when you get to that question of like, oh, we need this customization right now, or we need multi-team support right now, it becomes a lot more difficult. So having and not needing is definitely the preference here. So let's stop talking about the abstract and let's actually take a look at some real examples. So here I have my my Kanban board, and yeah, it's just as I mentioned before, we've got our nice visuals. We've got the ability to do our drag and drop. We can move things from processes. We can see how many issues we have in process right now. We're focusing on the now, on the things that are in progress that we're currently working on. And I think this is great for the most part. I think its main limitation is it's one dimension. If we're grouping by status, and if we want to group by status, this is great. If we want to group by other fields, if we want to display other information, if we want to customize this view, we're really limited. So if we do this same thing in Structure, I have this same project. So I'm pulling in from the Cloud project here. I'm pulling in these same issues, and I'm grouping them by their individual statuses. So I have my to-do, my in progress, and my done. And I'm even sorting by rank. So I'm looking at this in the same prioritized backlog as I have in the Kanban board. But I'm able to display a lot more information. And not just display it, but also change it. I can make edits right here. And if I move this to done, it's going to pop down to this other section right here. So it's not just a place to view your work, but it's also a place to manage, make changes, make updates. And we can see how much we're working on. We can see how many story points. We've got 16 story points in progress. That can be a lot or a little depending on your business, because everyone kind of defines story points as a different value here. But not only can we display more information as well as kind of doing the same things, but we can also add to this. I can group this by other fields as well if I want to add other dimensions. So I can group it by assignee, so I can see who's working on what. So I see that Alex and JJ are both working on an assigned issue, and I have an unassigned issue in progress. That seems a little bit strange. Maybe there's something going on there. Maybe somebody hasn't updated Jira. And we can add as many of these levels as we want. So if we want to create a very deep hierarchy, or we want to have many, many levels of grouping, there's a lot of customization. There's a lot of flexibility in the product to do what you need to. So moving on, we've also got a Scrum project here. So here I've got my Scrum board. I've broken my issues into sprints. And I gotta say, I like this one a lot more than the Kanban board. I think it provides a lot more information. So we can see the issue, we can see the epic, we can see how many points it's not started, how many are in progress, how many are done, the individual story points of the issues, their progress, their assignees. So we've got a lot more information here. And then we can see at the end of our sprints, we've got our backlog, which is going to be prioritized by rank as well. So we've got a lot more information here, but again, we're running into the same problem of we have just one dimension. So I've only got my, one breakdown based on sprint. If I want to group by other fields, it's not really something that the basic boards can support out of the box. Also, as I mentioned before, talking about these links, we don't really have a good way of representing a cross-project dependency. So here, I'm only pulling in issues from the Rock project. But if we look down, we actually see that I've got some cloud issues in here. And that's because I've got a link here. So this issue in Sprint 3, Rock 16, is blocked by Cloud 18. That might be a problem down the road. We might not want to talk to the Cloud team and make sure that this documentation is in place before we're trying to validate our communications API. So being able to visualize that we've got a dependency with another team is really, really helpful. And something I want to drive home right here is, the tool is kind of the starting step. It's the first step in revealing this information to make it actionable. As soon as we know that this relationship exists and this might pose a risk, this is our jumping off point. This is where we can start the conversation and reach out to that other team and ask them if this is going to be gone on time, or maybe we want to delay this to a later sprint, or maybe we want to wait until this issue is done before we even plan the issue that's blocked by it. There's a lot of different ways that we can address this, and that's highly going to be determined by your business processes and what's important to you. But this is just a great way to see and understand what's going on in order to make actionable decisions and insights. So yeah, I think that's kind of everything that I wanted to show here. But go back to my presentation. So structure grouping, I showed that we can group based on any field. So if you're using, assignees, components, anything, we can group on those fields. And not only can we group on those fields, we can group on multiple fields. So you can group by status and then by assignee and then by sprint and then by components. We can group by a lot of different fields to show how these overlapping grouping relationships have interplay. Something I didn't show, which I think is also important to mention, is we can also do an arbitrary grouping. So, we really like it when we can build a structure based on these generators and based on these rules and say, this is over here and this is over here based on certain information in Jira. But sometimes that information doesn't exist in Jira. Sometimes, it's organized and only, one person knows which group this issue is in and which group that issue is in. And so there's no reason why we say, are going to limit you. You can create a completely arbitrary grouping, using folders and kind of putting things wherever you want, even if that's not the way that your Jira instance is actually structured. With ordering, I do recommend ordering by rank. I think rank is really good. It's specifically designed for, ordering issues in a helpful and understanding way. But maybe that's not what you need. Maybe there are other things to consider. But I think the biggest thing here is, the Agile boards are already ordering by rank, which is great. But with structure, we can order by multiple fields. So if we wanted to order by due date and then priority, so if issues are due on the same day, the higher priority one shows up first, we can do that. In the Jira boards, we can order by a different field if we want, but we can't order by more than one. And I think that's kind of the main issue I see is this one dimensionality. We can't do it in multiple ways on multiple fields. And again, this ordering is going to support virtually every field that's available to Jira and Structure. And then lastly, linking. I think this is, where Structure really shines. Generally, we use these links to create the hierarchy, and the hierarchy has no limit. So, I generally try to keep it under 10, but, if there are definitely use cases where people need 12 or even more levels of hierarchy to either represent very complex relationships or deal with very, very large teams and very large organizations, trying to structure a lot of data all at once. They're going to work for all link types. And this is true for pretty much everything I've mentioned thus far. We support custom issue types, custom link types, custom fields. All of those things are perfectly fine. We are all about having that customization and optimization to kind of make things work the way you want them to, rather than restructuring your business processes around the tools that you use. And then, of course, we can also create a hierarchy manually. And what I mean by that here is arbitrarily. So if we want to create links and hierarchy based on information that we have in Jira and those relationships that we've defined, that's all well and good. But we can also create it completely arbitrarily for when that information either doesn't exist in Jira or isn't easily accessible. And then we also have the ability to do aggregation, which can be really nice. We can aggregate on essentially any numeric field, so we can see that roll up. This is especially nice when you have a lot of levels of hierarchy. You don't want to expand the entire thing and look down 10 levels to see, how many story points are on the subtask level or something. It's just nice to roll that all up, and no matter how many issues or sub-issues or whatever you have under this level, how many story points or how many whatever other field you're aggregating. We can also calculate the progress in aggregate, which can be really nice. So we can roll up that progress, seeing it based on the underlying issues and how they are. And that's often how people use the epics as kind of a grouping of work. So the progress of the epic is defined by the progress of its sub items. And we can also do it based on, the groupings and the hierarchy. So now I want to talk about the things that Structure does really well. And I think the multiple teams and multiple projects is one of the points where we shine really well. Whether you want those to be on a single board or not, it doesn't really make a big difference. We want it to be very, very flexible. So if you want to represent a lot of teams, a lot of projects, a lot of different relationships. All of those things are going to shine really well. But even if we're limited to a single project, we can still show those cross-project dependencies by following those links. We can define our own hierarchies. So, this is one of the points that kind of irritates me a little bit about the Jira boards, when they've got that, grouping by epics, they're saying this is the way you should group this, or not just the way you should group, this is the way you have to group. There's not another way to do it. But if you guys want to create custom issue types or, kind of strange hierarchies, I mean, there's nothing in Structure that says that subtask can't be the top level and epic can't be the bottom level, or completely customized issues could make up the whole thing. And then rolling up that progress and aggregating up to the high level, being able to see at a glance what's going on at the high level without digging into all the issues and kind of, doing all that manual checking. I think that's probably one of the biggest strengths, is just making information at a glance available. And then managing the backlog from multiple projects and dealing with those competing dependencies is something that Structure also does really, really well. And then I'd also like to take a minute to talk about Structure.Gantt Cloud. So historically, we've had it for server and data center. I know a lot of you have experience with server and data center, so maybe you've seen Structure.Gantt Cloud. It will be available very soon. We're expecting it sometime next week to launch, and we'll have the ability to visualize dynamic long-term plans. I think that there's a lot of value here, and I think you'll find that you can do a lot of things in this, straight out of the gate that Jira roadmaps cannot do. So yeah, let's take a look at that real quick. So my last tab over here. So on the left, I've got my structure board, and you can actually note that this is pretty customized. So these are an initiative type that I've got above my epics. And instead of my epics being an estimation level, they're actually my work level as far as this Gantt chart is concerned. And yeah, so let me just scroll over here. So we've got a lot of different information on the chart, and some of it may not be very obvious. So here I've got my start date set, and we've got this vertical bar over here to tell me that the start date is set. While this one up here doesn't have its start date or its finish date set, and so we don't see a vertical bar on either end. And that's how we know that this one is manually scheduled, or sorry, this one is manually scheduled, and this one is automatically scheduled. It's really good at representing these linking relationships. We can see that we've got some links down here. And out of the gate, we just treat the blocks link as a finish to start dependency. And creating a new link is just as simple as dragging and dropping. So now I've linked these two. And because this one's automatically scheduled, it knows that it needs to respect those linking relationships. So it immediately moves to the end of this issue. We can see down here that I've got a linking relationship that isn't being respected. And this red line is telling me that this one might need to be delayed. It's even telling me exactly how long it needs to be delayed for. If I was to just set this one to auto schedule, it will immediately respect the link and it'll go to right here. So let's just do that. I can switch this to auto. And now the red line disappeared, my start date disappeared, and now this one is being auto scheduled. We've also got the idea of grouping. You can see that my initiatives are my grouping here, and they basically start at the earliest issue and end at the latest one. And whenever I make any sort of change or adjustment here, it will affect that. So if I link these two, that one's going to pop forward, and you can see that I grouping expanded here. So it can be a really nice way to visualize your timeline, visualize your links, try to get an expectation of when this project is going to be done. And it's strange, I don't see the quick path here. Yeah, I think that's kind of everything that I wanted to show here. Yeah, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Nick. That was a great presentation. We do have some questions that are in the Q&A. As a reminder, if you have any questions you'd like to ask Nick, please just click on the Q&A button at the bottom and type in your question. So we have a few questions here, Nick. The first one is, Can you aggregate any column?
Almost. So we can aggregate almost any column. So essentially, any field that is numeric will be able to aggregate. So you know, even something like this, that counting. You know, we've got this count. Or actually, sorry, this is a numeric column. You actually can't. But here for story points, we can see it's a numeric column, and we get this sum over sub items. So anything that, or almost anything that's numeric, we'll be able to click this sum over sub items, and it's going to add this little sigma here, so we know it's being summed, and we can toggle that on and off very easily.
Okay. The next question, where are dependency types displayed? I'm not sure how we know Rock 16 is blocked by Cloud 18. Where is that visible?
That's a great question, actually. So we know that because of the way that we define the automation here. So here I've got add issues linked by blocked, and I know that the parent is blocked by children. So down here where I have a hierarchy, this is my only extender. So the only way that I can extend this relationship is with a blocking link. So I know, but because of the way that it is that I'm creating the structure. If I did add another extender, and I can add one right here, I can say for a different one, like relates to, yeah, parent relates to sub issue, I can add this relationship as well. And now if I try to move this issue, I didn't actually move it, it'll be ambiguous. And so it says, you know, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to create a type of relates or a type of blocks? So I'll keep it as a type of blocks. And now I've created a blocking relationship. So if we've only got one type of relationship, we know it's that one. And if there's ambiguity, we can or structure will ask us to clarify that ambiguity. But whenever possible, I would suggest, you know, keeping it so it's unambiguous. And then when it's unambiguous, we know that this is related via blockings link. And not only do we know, but structure knows too. So when I move this back, it doesn't ask me anymore. It just knows that it's a blocking relationship.
Okay. Can you use the same grouping on different levels?
Yeah, that's a great question. So over here, I've got, I'm gonna switch to a different structure so I can show this. So here I've got my some epics, and then if I want, I can extend those epics, and now I've got, oh, wrong type of extension. So yeah, if I extend my epic, so now I've got 2 levels, I can group on both those different levels. I'll just need 2 grouping generators to do that. So if I group by status, I can group by status at the top level. So now my epics are grouped by their status, but then I can also do another grouping, and I'll also group by status, and then I'll set this one to the next level. So now I've got the same grouping on 2 different levels. So yeah, we can do not only multiple groupings, but we can do multiple of the same grouping on different levels to show all these different relationships. Because maybe, you know, it's important what state the epic is in as well as what state its children are in.
Okay, great. Can we use this to plan resource management across teams?
So you can. I think there are some limitations, and I think that Structure.Gantt deals really well with those limitations. So here I have my different sprints, and what I do is I do my story point roll up. So I can see I've got 21 story points for this sprint and 30 story points for this sprint. So this is like a very basic level of resource management, and this is one of the more common use cases I see. It's going to be highly dependent on what information you have in Jira for that estimation level and the resource level. But essentially, if the information is available and well-defined in Jira, it becomes really easy and trivial to include it in Structure and make it available.
Okay. Can you show us an effector on this structure?
I cannot, because effectors are only available for server and data center. We don't have effectors for cloud yet. For anyone who isn't familiar, the effector is a really nice way of copying information from one place to another. The most common use case that I see is actually using a formula field to copy or to calculate information, and then you can copy that information somewhere else using an effector. I know that formula columns are coming soon for cloud, and I think after formula columns are available, effectors will have a lot more value, and that'll be probably something that we'll be including not long after that.
Okay. When it becomes available, will Structure.Gantt Cloud cost extra?
That is a good question. I don't mean to dodge it, but long term, most likely yes. But when it launches next week, it will be free. So it'll be free for probably a little while until it gets up to enough features that it's worth an actual price tag. Yes, it will likely be for purchase. But I expect that's a ways out, probably 6 to 12 months, but we'll see.
Okay. Will formula columns be available in Structure Cloud?
Formula columns will definitely be available in Structure Cloud. That is near the top of our backlog, actually. And if you guys are interested, we can check out the backlog right here. It's on our roadmap. Sorry, not backlog. I meant roadmap. But yeah, we can see formula columns are right here at the top. So yeah, Gantt charts available next week. Formula columns are really literally next on the list. So I expect that they'll be available sometime soon, although I can't give you an exact date today.
Okay. Next question. Do you plan to support integration with multiple Jira instances?
We do have plans to support multiple Jira instances. You can see that's actually just a little bit further down on the roadmap.
And when will drag and drop changes be supported?
Yeah, so drag and drop changes are already supported. As I showed, we can drag and drop issues to change links. It's just a slow iterative process. We're adding more and more things that you can do with the drag and drop. I'm sure if you guys are familiar with Server, there's a lot of changes that you can do with drag and drop, and we do have the intent to get to full feature parity with Structure Server, but currently we can do drag and drop just for changing links, and soon we'll have more options that can be accomplished with drag and drop.
Okay, and I believe I missed it, but will Excel export be available in Structure Cloud as well?
Yes, Excel export will absolutely be available in Structure Cloud. We can see that that's very near the top. So that's something I expect rather soon.
All right. Well, that's all the questions that we got so far. If there are any questions that anyone wanted to ask after the webinar, we will be having we'll provide an email for you to use so you can send those questions to us. So to wrap up the webinar, as a next steps, like I said earlier, the webinar will be available on our YouTube channel in 24 to 48 hours. If you go to the link alm.work/YouTube and go to our playlist webinar archive, you will get access to all of our previous and current webinar recordings. If you would like to learn more about Structure Cloud, you could go to alm.works/structure, and the email to contact us if you have any other questions or comments about today's presentation, you can use the webinars@almworks.com email. So that's the end of today's webinar. And I'd like to thank Nick for presenting his topic today. And we hope to see you at our next webinar, which will be at the end of September. Thank you and have a great day.